With the surprise banning of Felidar Guardian and the release of Amonkhet, the MTG community has the chance to brew once again. And even with Mardu vehicles all over the recent SCG Open and ultimately winning that event, there's still plenty of promise. But how can we take on this Mardu menace? With a little help from our friends. Superfriends, that is. Hey, it's Vincent here, and welcome to Vincent Games, your untapped source of Magic the Gathering info, tips, and discussion. There are tons of new deck techs being showcased, and at my FNM there's lots of excitement about what people will be building and playing in new standard. It is an exciting time to be playing Magic. This deck is a fresh take on the Superfriends decks that were floating around before they were snuffed out of the meta completely. Now that we don't need to be concerned about tapping out past turn 3 anymore, now is the time to assemble the Gatewatch. Except Jace. That guy's a dick. So let's begin with the obvious. 3 new Gideon and 3 old Gideon. Gideon, ally of Zendikar, has proven himself to be the most impactful thing you can cast on turn 4 in standard right now. He protects himself, he's difficult to deal with, and he's a win condition all on his own. There's no more I need to say about this card. Gideon of the Trials also defends itself well, nullifying a threat, and the you can't lose the game effect is just straight up unfair. This ability means that as well as having a bit of redundancy, the extra copies could prove useful. What I mean is, your opponent is obviously incentivized to kill any Gideon, not only just because of the fact it's a Gideon, but if it's stopping them from winning the game, they're heavily incentivized to kill it, otherwise they just won't win. Therefore, if you can force them to expend a lot of resources to do this, only to then cast another one the following turn, that could be quite backbreaking, which is why I'm happy to run 6 copies of Gideon in this deck. This deck wants to take over the game with Planeswalkers, and derailing your opponent's game plan is an integral part of this. And let's not forget that the new Gideon is also quite good at punching your opponent in the head. Next up is Liliana the Last Hope and Nissa Voice of Zendikar, 2 copies of each. Liliana is a powerhouse, helping you to nullify or potentially kill threats while she ticks up and threatens to take over the game. Nissa makes blockers, but her other 2 abilities are quite conditional. I feel this makes her the weakest Planeswalker in the deck, so she could easily be cut for additional removal, or just better Planeswalkers. However, I've left her in for now as she's cheap to cast, and as she makes blockers, she's giving us time to build up a Planeswalker army, which is exactly what we need. 2 Nahiri the Harbinger, and 2 Chandra Tortured Defiance next. Nahiri is the perfect fit for Superfriends, even if her membership into the Gatewatch is still pending approval. She filters through your deck and acts as removal. Her ultimate is almost completely useless in this deck, but that's okay if she's drawing you cards and decimating your opponent's board. That's fine with me. Speaking of decimating things, Chandra helps to burninate pesky creatures as well. And let's not forget that she can add mana, potentially power out more Planeswalkers from the top of your deck, and has an ultimate that ends the game hilariously quickly. Getting higher up the curve, we have 1 Nissa Vital Force and 1 Chandra Flamecaller. Nissa helps to bring back any fallen comrades to really diminish your opponent's resolve, as well as threaten an ultimate that will push you ahead in those grindy matchups. Not only that, she helps you really change the pace of the game by making a 5/5 out of nowhere and beating face. Cast Nissa, attack for 5, next turn cast Chandra Flamecaller, untick them both, and then swing in for 11. The ability to suddenly change gears like this and threaten to close a game out of nowhere is really nice. Finally, we have 1 Ob Nixilis Reignited, 1 Sorin Grim Nemesis, and 1 Ajani the Unyielding. All of these have decent plus abilities to help draw cards in some way, and have solid minus removal abilities as well. Ob's ultimate is probably the best in a vacuum, providing an unstoppable source of damage to our opponent. And Sorin makes a random number of vampires, which isn't totally irrelevant, but his plus ability will invariably do more damage throughout the course of a game. Not only that, it's giving you more cards, which is far more meaningful. Ajani's ultimate is also quite conditional, and I imagine most of the time you'd probably want to just use him to filter your deck or exile something. But let's face it, even if you ignored all 3 of these ultimates, they're powerful cards and they fit perfectly into this deck. Now, you may have noticed the horrendous mana requirements needed to cast all of these cards. Well, fret not, as with the help of 4 Servant of the Conduit and 2 Attune, we can get the colours that we need. The deck's mana base is heavily geared towards green, which I'll show you in a second, and this helps us to cast our 4 Oaths of Nissa and 4 Oath of Ajani. After all, what kind of Superfriends deck would this be without casting Oath cards? Oath of Nissa does some real work here, filtering our draws, but also allowing us to spend mana as though it were any colour to cast Planeswalkers. Combined with Attune and Servant of the Conduit, this really helps to take the pressure off our mana base and should give us the colours we need. Oath of Ajani helps us to power out some of our bigger Planeswalkers ahead of the curve. Imagine turn 1 land Oath of Nissa, turn 2 land Servant of the Conduit, turn 3 another land Oath of Ajani, and then Nissa Voice of Zendikar with the reduction. This sets up a turn 4 where you can cast a 6-drop Planeswalker, or do something completely silly like cast Chandra Tortured Defiance for 3 mana, tick her up to make 2 more mana, and then cast Gideon of the Trials and Liliana the Last Hope, meaning you have 4 Planeswalkers out on turn 4, which is insane. Now yes, that is a bit magical Christmas land, but my point is, with the help of Oath of Ajani, there is some potential there. Lastly, to round the deck out and stop us getting overwhelmed by quick starts from aggro decks, there are 2 Fatal Push and 2 Fumigate. Fatal Push is the most efficient answer to early threats, it would be silly not to include it, and Fumigate is nice as a panic button. As for the land, we have 4 Aether Hub and 4 Evolving Wilds. 4 Aether Hub synergizes well with the Conduit and Attune to Aether, and 4 Evolving Wilds to help us get the colours we need as well. To help us cast our green cards early and to support the black splash, we have 4 Blooming Marsh. To help with the white cards, we have 4 Canopy Vista. Cinder Glade also helps us with our red splash. I've leaned towards these Battle for Zendikar lands, given the Evolving Wilds and basic lands, of which there are 2 forests, 1 mountains, 1 plains, and 1 swamp. The reason for this being is, whilst there are other options, I feel it's important to not have too many comes into play tapped lands as the game progresses. So between Evolving Wilds and drawing basic lands, naturally, we should have plenty of lands that come into play untapped, allowing us to play Planeswalkers either on curve or ahead of curve with the help of Oath of Ajani. As for the sideboard, we have 4 Fevered Visions and 1 island against the control decks. The thought process behind this is, against these controlling strategies, we have very powerful cards against them naturally, and in theory they shouldn't be able to stop everything that we cast. So adding 4 Fevered Visions into the mix allows us to have a critical mass of must-counter threats to hopefully overwhelm our opponent with. 3 Descend Upon the Sinful is a nod to the potential resurgence of Green-Black Delirium. Being able to exile all their powerful creatures is going to be very relevant in that matchup. We also have 4 Radiant Flames and 3 Blessed Alliance. I could easily imagine a 1 Radiant Flames being swapped out for a Release the Gremlins, as that card is quite useful against Mardu. So there you have it, Super Friends for Amonkhet Standard. The idea of this deck is to aggressively build up an advantage using your Planeswalkers to overwhelm your opponent. I believe this deck could give Mardu vehicles a run for its money. It disrupts the game long enough and has such a diversity in its threats that this archetype is worth a second look. I would talk in more detail about some of the interactions of these cards, but there are so many different combinations of Planeswalkers that you could have out. I could talk about this for ages. I think it's fair to say the different types of Planeswalkers you can have out, you're going to be attacking from all sorts of angles, which is a really appealing concept and will keep opponents guessing as to what you're going to do next, or the best way to attack, what Planeswalker they need to deal with, whether they should be blocking or attacking aggressively, which really makes the game harder for them and puts you in a good position. And I don't know about you, but I enjoy playing decks like this, which really put that kind of pressure on your opponent. The other thing I want to say is it was really hard not to build this as a 5-colour deck, but the mana base was horrible enough without skewing it further. Maybe Oath of Nissa is good enough that you can push it, but you're not guaranteed to draw that every game, which is why I've left it as base green-white with a heavy red and white splash only. Only. That being said, there are many other options for this archetype, like Nissa, Steward of Elements, and Koira, Master of the Depths. Koira, for example, can do some fun things, untapping lands and creatures, especially with Weaver of Currents from Amonkhet. Combine that with Oath of Ajani, and you could really power out stuff quickly. Going into blue would also open up Oath of Jace, and let's not forget about the Oath of Chandra, Liliana, and Gideon as well. All of these cards add very relevant effects and synergize perfectly with how this deck plays. I've just gone for more Planeswalkers in this version, as I feel they're generally more powerful, but I could easily imagine cutting 1 or 2 for things like this. Let me know if you agree with that in the comments section below. Are there any of these cards or other Planeswalkers you feel I've missed out? How would you build a Super Friends deck? If you've enjoyed this video, then consider subscribing, as I'll be posting more deck ideas in the future, including a Reanimator deck featuring more new cards from Amonkhet. If you're interested in hearing more about Standard, I also record a podcast called Glimmer of Genius, the link for which can be found in the description below. If you like what you see and you'd like to show your support, in the description box below is a link to my Facebook page. If you want to show your support, then please like the page, please like this video, and get involved in some of the MTG discussion. In the meantime, thanks for watching and stay tuned for more.